Committee and challenge to 2020.
Okay.
2012.
So in regards to our meetings here this week in Madrid with our industrial and our legal committees, they face a couple of issues that are similar for both committees. For example, they're both talking this week about all the issues around transnational airlines, the EasyJet Ryanair model, where the companies literally are not in one country like Iberia would be in Spain, for example, and how do they protect pilots' rights? How do they represent pilots? What does it mean for their livelihood and their scheduling rules and that? So those are two very important topics that both of those committees will be meeting about this week. I don't know if they're realistic or not. For example, I don't live in Europe. I'm an outsider looking at the European Union concept. And what I see in this concept is that the economic value for a corporation in a country has been released, but the protections for the individuals in the countries has not been released. And we have to figure out a way through that, or else things will get moved around to where it's a lower protection rather than a more robust protection. And that's the real problem moving forward, because if I'm in the United States, we have 50 states, but we're under one law. One of the issues is each of the individual countries through Europe that are or will be part of a transnational airline has a different social underpinning, I would call it, that what takes care of them with maybe their medical and their retirement. So what it does is it creates the issue of a management team wanting to move flying somewhere where those conditions don't apply. And how do we figure out how to keep that from happening? And if it does happen, how do we protect the pilots that have been moved? So both the Industrial Committee and the Legal Committee are exploring ways to find layers of protection for those groups. Really, this is the Iberia Express issue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, if it's been tried everywhere around the world with an airline that decides they want to have a subsidiary of their own airline or a spin-off and make what they call a low-cost carrier. The issue is many times it's never succeeded. The majority of the time it's never succeeded. At my airline at Delta, we've tried 2 different times to do exactly the same thing. The first time is we tried to take and make a low-cost carrier within our own pilots, but at a reduced pay rate and working out of one base in the leisure market, and it failed. The second time we tried to take a 757 fleet and create a one-class type seating like a JetBlue and fly a leisure market from the New York, Boston area to Florida. We learned some things from it. It failed. What we found now is after going through bankruptcy, coming out of bankruptcy with all the pain involved, we have a management that wants to run an airline, and they want to run a mainline airline with no subsidiaries, with just a core business. And since they've made that decision, we've grown and we're profitable. And mergers and such, low-cost carriers, when we have that whole topic, really what you have here is to break them all down. The alliances were created so that they could increase their reach without the expense. And it's another one of the tools that's been used over the last 10 years in an industry that's really trying to survive. So if we just move into the survival mode, that's one of the reasons why. Low-cost carriers, I mean, we need to be honest about why a low-cost carrier came along. And that is at the beginning of the last decade, when the mainline carriers were weak, they came in and filled a void. And now they're here. So how do we deal with them? In many regards, they'll always have their own little place, but Ryanair cannot fly you to the United States or to Africa or Asia. You're going to get on Iberia and you're going to do that. Southwest Airlines isn't going to fly a passenger to Madrid. You're going to come on a Delta, an American, or United, or Continental flight and do that. So they're not going to be able to do everything. And the real mistake that would be, the real failure would be this, and that is if a country were to lose a very old, well-established, proud airline, all because of a low-cost carrier or because they wanted to become a low-cost carrier, that's a real tragedy, because in my own experience, they tried to do that, they failed, and we went into bankruptcy. Instead of doing the right, let's be an airline. If we're Delta Airlines, we're Iberia, let's be Iberia. Let's find out if there's a way to mold Iberia to be a good Iberia, a better competing Iberia. But to take Iberia and split it up and make low-cost carriers, I would ask, will it be profitable? Will it work? I'm not sure it will.
On the survival mode.
It's a lot different than it was even 10 years ago with airline economics, just because 10 years ago they were in such bad shape they put off business decisions to buy new airplanes. Now they have to do that. Yet the economy's not real good and they're not making enough money to really be able to do that. So it clearly, I'm not going to say it's not a easy, it's a difficult situation. It's not easy. But finding little games or gimmicks as the solution never really works. The only way that works is to concentrate on, and in the case of Iberia, they have a merger now with British Airways. They should try to strengthen that. They should try to build on it, not play a game and come up with a gimmick. It didn't work in England. Why is it going to work in Spain now? It's not.
Not low-cost airlines, the new airlines of Asia.
Well, the Asian market it's the largest growing. The Middle East is still growing, but they've grown to be huge. And Asia is definitely the emerging market. It's the incredibly high growth. They're building new airports almost by the dozens. They'll be buying airplanes at an incredible rate because they now have a population and economy that we call in the States a middle class. They can afford to go on vacation, they can afford to fly, and they're demanding these things. They want cars, they want air travel, they want to do what the Western world has done for a long time, which is what created our industry. So they are growing. What would be a shame is that we don't find a way to compete with them. And one of the problems in competing with them is having equal access. So, the unfair application of how, for example, Iberia can fly into China or a Delta can fly into China when they clearly need the capacity, but they don't let us in equitably, creates more pressures for our own home national airlines. And it is growing, so you have that part of just how do we have access so that we can participate. The other side of the coin is they're growing so fast that we have to make sure they're safe. We have to make sure that they apply the international standards, that their aircraft, their airports, their air traffic control systems are up to the same standards ours are, or else there'll be an accident rate that is really high there, and that's unacceptable as well. And that's all right back to part of being able to survive. And we need our own national airlines to develop strategies that grow and prosper so we can afford to, we're training pilots. You're training pilots in Spain under superior rules for somebody else instead of for yourself. And the stop to that is that we have living conditions and wages for pilots that say, no, I want to stay here in Spain and fly.